Welcome to the Unstressed Exec, the podcast where we dive deep into the real conversations that help you lead, love, and live with greater clarity, courage, and calm. I'm your host, Dr. George Vergolias, executive coach and clinical forensic psychologist, and I help high-achieving professionals navigate life transitions, resolve conflict with confidence, and build unshakable psychological resilience. So if you're ready to lead with purpose, master conflict with grace, and become more emotionally agile under pressure, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Unstressed Exec. I'm Dr. George Vergolias, executive and resilience coach, forensic psychologist, and your guide in learning how to lead, love, and live with less tension and more clarity. In the last few episodes, we explored conflict, how to navigate it, communicate in it, and even grow through it. But what about after the rupture? What happens when trust is broken, when something is said or done, and now the connection feels fractured, maybe even unrecognizable? Today's episode is exactly about that moment. When the damage is done and you're left wondering, can we come back from this? Whether the betrayal happened in a relationship, at work, or among close friends, the answer is yes, but only if you have the right roadmap. Let's talk about it. So why broken trust hurts so deeply? Trust is what makes relationships feel safe and secure. It's the quiet belief that someone's got your back, that their words are aligned with their actions, that you're not walking on eggshells, for example. So when trust breaks, even once, it doesn't just hurt emotionally, it rattles our nervous systems. It makes us feel anxious, hypervigilant. We replay conversations on a loop. We can't seem to get it out of our mind. In clinical nomenclature, we would say we're ruminating about these things. And that's not weakness. That's your survival brain kicking in. We've spoken in past episodes about the fight or flight or freeze response. At a neurological level, it's your RAS, your reticular activating system, and your amygdala trying to determine if a continued threat is posed and whether you should fight, run away, or freeze. And this can be adaptive in the short term. From an evolutionary perspective, it has allowed us to judge if that noise outside the cave was just the wind or was it a hungry saber-toothed tiger. And making that distinction is critical for our survival, or it used to be. It kept us prepared and it kept us ready. But in 2025, those same threats are not present to the degree that they were. We generally live in a much safer world. But rather, we face emotional threats to our integrity, our respect, our sense of self. Perhaps most devastatingly, betrayal hurts so much because it forces us to consider that we made some error in judgment. We read a situation wrong in some way, or we didn't quite size up the context appropriately. Betrayal doesn't just make us question others, it actually makes us question ourselves. It makes us question our own judgment. And that is equally debilitating. But there's some good news. Trust is repairable with intention and with structure and with time. So let's talk more about that. First, let's get into the types of betrayal and why they hit differently. Because not all betrayals are created equal. Most of us might think that. And when we're in the midst of feeling betrayed, it may feel the same, but there are differences. For example, in romantic relationships, betrayal might look like cheating or secrecy or emotional neglect. In leadership at work, it could be a boss who publicly undercuts you after promising support or throws insulting comments your way, even if in jest, in front of important clients. This happened to me one time. Actually, it happened to me several times over the years, and it is very unsettling. In friendships, betrayal might come off as gossip or abandonment or being left out during a crisis. The deeper the trust, the deeper the hurt when we feel betrayed. But also, the deeper the possibility for transformation when both parties are committed to understanding each other's experience and moving forward on a positive note. So to help do that, to help kind of make that forward progression happen, to help make distrust or betrayals of trust become a transformating event or a transformating power, let's talk about 5 steps of rebuilding trust. And I'm going to walk through the 5 steps that I use with clients, whether they're couples, executives, or teams. Step 1 is acknowledging the damage and doing it without defensiveness. That's so important. This is where most people fail. They might say things like, I didn't mean to do such and such, or you're too sensitive, or you're reading into things. In some cases, they might flip it and say, you're gaslighting me by just merely acknowledging that damage was done. But that only deepens the wound. Instead, if we have done some kind of betrayal, we might want to say something like, I know I hurt you. I may not fully understand it yet, but I'm trying and I want to understand it better so that I can avoid doing this in the future. That statement alone opens the door. It softens one's sense of vulnerability. It takes on accountability on our part for making the transgression or making the betrayal, whether we intend it or not. And it opens the door for open communication. And it removes some of the ego that can occur and become or make people become entrenched in those moments. Step 2 is owning your part and owning it fully. Accountability here has to be clear and specific. So you don't want to simply say, I'm sorry if that hurt you, or I'm sorry if I hurt you. That's vague. We're really not owning the damage done. We're not owning what we did specifically. So instead of that, consider this. I broke your trust when I lied about where I was. That wasn't okay. I'm sorry about that, and I'm going to work really hard not to ever let that happen again. Intent here matters, but impact matters more. How we say something. In a prior podcast, I spoke about how roughly 70 to 80% of our communication is nonverbal. Another 20 or so percent is about tone and how we phrase the message. And the last remaining 10 or so percent is basically the content. But so many of us focus on the content. So here again, intent matters, words matter, but the impact matters more. So keep in mind how you're presenting this with tone and full accountability. Step 3 is create psychological safety for the dialogue to occur. This is critical. Let the other person share what this meant to them without interrupting them, without justifying your actions, and without explaining it away. This can be really tough if you haven't done it, but be quiet, listen openly, and seek understanding before judgment. So you might ask this question. What do you need me to understand about how this impacted you? And what I love about this question is it really opens the dialogue. It opens the interaction in a way where you're really giving them kind of free openness. You're giving them the mic to really tell you how it impacted you. But you really have to have an openness to listen to it, right? And that's the key, listening, because that space, that listening space in that moment is sacred. And how you carry that out in the first minute is going to set the tone. Are you really engaged in listening and curious and open, or are you really just doing this for the optics? In this moment, it's not a zero-sum game focused on being right. It's really about understanding the other person's experience and helping them feel heard and understood. Step 4 is set repair agreements. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let me get into it. Rebuilding trust isn't just emotional, it is practical. It's about aligning our words and our actions in tune with our intention. Let me say that again. It's aligning our words and our actions to be in tune with our intention. So through the rebuilding process, we arrive at agreements, or what I call repair agreements, that provide structure and rules of engagement for the relationship to move forward. So some general questions you might ask at this moment are things like, what boundaries do we need right now? What expectations should be clarified? What's one small action that proves that I'm making changes or I'm trying to make changes towards a better reconciliation? Examples of these might be things like transparency around finances, if you're having financial debates or financial difficulties. If you're just feeling disconnected, maybe you have kids, right? Maybe I like to say you're in the shit, right? You have several young kids and young kids are demanding in terms of time demand, right? And needs. And maybe they're being run all over town because there's activities and sports and you're working long hours and your partner is working long hours. So doing weekly relationship check-ins, what I like to call board meetings once a week, where you check in with each other, you identify each other's needs for the upcoming week, you identify high priorities, you also hold each other accountable for personal goals that you're working on, right? So weekly check-ins, again, I like to call these board meetings. And routinely as part of my coaching, If somebody is in a committed relationship, almost everyone that I do executive coaching with, I talk about the importance of these board meetings once a week to align and tune in to the biggest partner in your life, the one that's living with you. It's your spouse or your long-term partner or your significant other. Another example might be adjusting roles in a business partnership. So again, there was a betrayal, something got dropped, something created mistrust. Part of the move towards reconciliation is maybe acknowledging, hey, we need to realign some of our roles, maybe to tap better into our strengths and maybe to tap better into our sense of trust with each other. And a final example under this category of repairing agreements might be a shared agreement to pursue therapy, couples therapy, or coaching, where someone says, listen, I'm stuck. I'm feeling at an impasse. I don't feel like I'm making progress. And so I think I need to get some support in that regard. I recently started working with a marital couple, not on their marital problems, but they were both at kind of a crossroads of career changes in different directions. Each of them had different things going on, and they really wanted to hold themselves and each other accountable. So they agreed both to come into coaching. And I love that because that is such a emotional and time and physical and even financial commitment to promoting change and doing it in a way where they're really pushing and supporting each other along the way. So that's a wonderful example. So let's go on to step 5, follow through with relational consistency. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me open that with there's a golden rule, and that consistency is better than intensity. Intensity is a great boost in the short term, but consistency over time is what really occurs and really drives lasting change. And let me give you a weather analogy to hit this home. Almost all of us know, some of us have been directly involved in the devastation that is a tornado. A tornado is an intense, often it just lasts minutes at any given location, but it is intense and it is very damaging in a very short amount of time. And it can do a lot of damage, and we've seen the damage done. But compare the shaping of a landscape that a tornado does in an intense few minutes with the shaping of a stream that has been consistently running over hundreds of thousands of years. And you're probably already predicting what I'm going to say next, which is that's how the Grand Canyon got formed. So the damage or the shaping of the Grand Canyon, which is very small steps consistently over time, just a little stream growing and growing and growing and getting a bit bigger, right, into a river. And in some cases, it goes back to a stream. But look at the immense power that has had over time. That is consistency, right? So a grant in this kind of context about following through with relational consistency and repairing the relationship, a grand apology means little without follow through. We must have our words be in alignment with our actions. So remember, behavior doesn't lie. I've said this before and you'll hear me say it again. Behavior doesn't lie. No matter how much a person promises to change or promises to do XYZ, until their behavior shifts in alignment with those promises, the change hasn't occurred. So trust rebuild not in a single moment, but in 100 micro moments of alignment, which occur over time. That could be weeks, it could be months, in some cases it could be years, depending on the nature of the betrayal, the nature of the trust needed, the nature of the repair needed, and the nature of the relationship. So imagine a fine china plate, right? It takes a second to smash that plate into 100 pieces, just like it takes a brief moment to damage trust. But to rebuild that plate, it takes much longer. It takes care, it takes dedication, and it takes commitment to work through the process. That is hard work, but it can be fruitful once you come out the other side. So those are the 5 steps. Let me quickly go back over them. Acknowledge the damage without defensiveness. 2, own your part fully. 3, create psychological safety for the dialogue, for a helpful, fruitful dialogue to occur. 4, set repair agreements. And step 5, follow through with relational consistency. So what happens if you're not the one doing the betrayal? You're the one that's been betrayed, right? Someone betrayed you. Almost everyone listening to this can acknowledge that at some point in their life they have felt betrayed, right? So maybe you're not trying to rebuild a relationship. You're the one that's been hurt. Maybe you're trying to rebuild yourself after someone let you down. You're trying to go into self-repair, which is very powerful and often needed. Here's what I want you to know, though, about when you're betrayed. You can forgive without forgetting. It's possible. Sometimes we hear this notion that, well, you got to forget to forgive. Nope. You can forgive without forgetting. Just like you can get back to trusting someone, but still need to verify their integrity, right? It's the old Ronald Reagan political statement, right? Trust, but verify. Even if your enemies come to an agreement with you, you might want to trust the agreement, but verify. You can do the same in your relationships. So you can forgive without forgetting. You can also heal without reconciling. Because when we separate, even if we can't get back together with the person and have a relationship, friendship, co-working relationship, or intimate relationship with them, we are still working on the relationship in terms of what they meant to us, what they symbolized to us, and what part of them we are still carrying forward, both good and bad, how they influenced us in a good way and how they may have influenced us in a bad way. All of that part you can still work on and heal that inner relationship, that inner dialogue, even if you are not reconciling with the other person. So the age-old thing of, well, that person's no longer in my life. I'm not talking to them, and maybe I shouldn't. Maybe they're toxic. But it doesn't mean I can't keep working on how that relationship affected me. And most importantly, you can rebuild trust in your own instincts again. I mentioned this early, and I want to hit this point again. The problem with trust is certainly that somebody else, betrayed us. They offended us. They let us down. But one of the biggest things I work with with my clients in coaching is getting over their own feeling that they let themselves down by misjudging the situation, letting themselves being taken advantage of, feeling shamed, feeling vulnerable. And often there's a rebound effect where to defend against that feeling, that uncomfortable emotion, someone ends up saying, well, I'm never going to trust again. I'm not going to let anyone else in again. Okay, that's your choice. That's a pretty dismal choice if you have 30, 40, 50, 60 more years on this planet. To me, making that choice for most people, not all, but for most people, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So again, most importantly, you can rebuild trust in your own instincts again. That you can do that, where you're now able to trust again and let yourself be vulnerable, but do it with a certain degree of guarded optimism. Remember that your boundaries are sacred. Your healing is your responsibility. You've got to take accountability for it. And your trust is a gift. Our trust is a gift that we give to other people. It's not something to be demanded, and it's not something that people can simply require of us. It's truly a choice, and it's a gift that we get. All right, so we've talked quite a bit through these issues for the last 19 minutes. So let's kind of just do some closing thoughts here. So remember that whether you're the one who broke trust or the one left holding the bag of hurt, you're the one that's been betrayed. Remember this, rebuilding is possible. It's not automatic. It takes time. It takes clarity and compassion, and it does take commitment and consistency. So my question for you is, if this is really resonating, what's one step, just one small step that you can take today or this week to begin repairing a relationship? Maybe you did the betrayal. What is one step that we talked about today that maybe you could think about implementing and just kind of almost using it experimentally to see where it takes you in that relationship? And if you're the one being hurt, what is one step that you might want to ask the other person that hurt you to maybe take in order to help repair the relationship? And if you fall into this third category where you're the one that was hurt and you're done with the relationship, it's just maybe it's toxic, maybe the pain was too much, maybe you've already gone your own way, can you look deeply in the mirror and ask yourself, have I resolved the internal relationship between me and what this person represented and what they did to me? And am I at a place where I can trust myself again, where I can trust my instincts again? That if you're in that third bucket, that might be a most appropriate question for you to look at this week. So along these challenges I have for you, maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's setting a boundary. It could be making a journal entry. I recently worked with somebody that was coaching with me. None of those resonated. I literally had them put together a playlist. Back in the day, we would call these a mixtape if you made the mixed cassette tapes for your girlfriend or boyfriend when you were in high school or grade school. Those don't exist anymore. So I literally said, go make a playlist on Spotify or Apple or whatever your music streaming service is, with songs that kind of resonate a healing vibe and allow you to lay this burden down and move forward. So there's different creative things you can do here to work on this. It could be just taking a pause from a crazy schedule or a crazy dating scene, right? Just pulling out of the dating scene for a few weeks, just to kind of reset. It could be a moment to pull back and get clarity on where are you in terms of trust and vulnerability and openness. Are you really at a place that you think you are, or do you need to do an internal inventory there? All right, so there it is. I hope that is helpful. Let me quickly talk about my next few episodes. So what I'm going to do over the next few episodes is I'm going to focus on men's mental health. And of course, this is going to be in support of June being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So over the next 4 or so episodes, I'm going to unpack the challenges that men uniquely face in managing their mental health, as well as useful perspectives and techniques to improve your own well-being if you're a man with struggles, or maybe you're in a relationship with a man. Maybe you're a woman, or maybe you're a man who's in a relationship with another man. So the question for you might be, how can you best help or support the other man in your life who you may be worried about, who you feel might be pulling back, who you feel might be stuck, who you feel might be carrying, massive emotional struggles, and they're just not talking about it? These next few episodes are going to be all about how you can help improve yourself if you are that guy, or how you can help the men and guys in your life. Until then, if this episode helped you, it would help me greatly if you could subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you know is struggling to trust again. Or ask them to tune in, especially the men in your life. Ask them to tune in to the next several episodes where we're going to be going deep into men's mental health. Okay, I'm Dr. George Vergolias. Thank you for listening, and this is the Unstressed Exec Podcast. See you next time, and remember, shift happens.